Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So hello everybody, my name is Mark Sage and I'm the Executive Director of the Augmented Reality for Enterprise Alliance, or what we normally know as the AREA. And a warm welcome to our latest webinar, The Benefits and Challenges of Enterprise AR Implementation and How Industry Leaders Overcome Them. And I'm really excited that today's webinar is in partnership with MakeUK, the manufacturers organisation, and they'll be doing a quick introduction to themselves in a few minutes. To start with, just to let everybody know that the AREA has delivered a number of webinars around the enterprise augmented reality space that's available at the AREA website, www.thearea.org. And if you navigate to the AREA resources, and under there is the AREA videos and webinars. Lots of information covering lots of different areas, so please feel free to have a look at those. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at mark@thearea.org. What I would say for the people listening to the webinar, that there will be at the end opportunities to ask questions. We do this by using the webinar tool, and there's a questions part there. Please feel free to type in those questions at any time through the conversation or through the presentation. We will be looking to pick them up at the end and answering any questions that we can. If not, we will be providing some answers to the questions, as well as the link to the webinar where it would be hosted and where you can go and look at it again. So please feel free to ask questions on that questions part. And today I'm really excited to be joined by some of the UK's leading experts and practitioners in enterprise AR. Our panelists are responsible for delivering and enabling AR solutions, and are able to talk about their experiences in real detail, which I think is really exciting and interesting. I hope you're looking forward as much as I am to listening to the insights, and they'll introduce themselves and their companies in a little bit more detail in a few seconds. But before we start, I'd like to hand over to Stephen Tulip from the MakeUK organisation, who's going to talk a little bit about what MakeUK is and what they're doing. Stephen, can I hand over to you?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Stephen Tulip. I'm from MakeUK, and I'd like to start off by thanking you all for logging onto this webinar and for thanking our speakers for their time today, and particularly Mark and the AREA for setting it all up. Really looking forward to hearing what they've got to say. They're all experts in the fields, and it should be a fascinating discussion. I should probably explain a little bit about MakeUK, formerly EEF, and who we are and what we do. We are the largest membership body for UK manufacturing, and we are the largest network of UK manufacturers. We campaign and lobby for the manufacturing sector to government. We provide insights and guidance. We run a wide range of events, from face-to-face networking events to digital events like this one on key themes, and we provide a range of business support, including apprentice training, HR legal, and health and safety. But we're here today to talk about augmented reality. And why is that? Well, it's all because of the fourth industrial revolution. Digital technology is changing at such a pace that it's bringing on the next stage of industrial revolution, in the same way that steam revolutionized the way that industry worked years ago. And I'm going to use an example to explain why that works from my colleague Jim, who kindly shared it with me. So Jim started off his career back in 1987 at a CD manufacturing plant. This plant was cutting edge at the time, and it made 6,000 units a day. When that plant closed in 2002, they made 500,000 units every single day. That is a massive increase. And well, how did they do that? It was all down to technology and adopting new technologies. So they invested in a local network that meant that they could have monitoring sensors, which enabled them to monitor things like vibration and noise and temperature to make sure their machines were running effectively and to do preventative maintenance. It meant that they could have processes that were repeatable and reliable, so that they had a lot less wastage, and it meant that they could have much more agility and flexibility because all of the machines were linked and could communicate with each other. Now, when they implemented this through the 90s, it was incredibly expensive. They had to build a local network just to get the machines to talk to each other. Adoption of that technology today would be much more affordable because of things like cloud computing and low-cost sensors. But how does this relate to augmented reality? Well, when Jim started his career in 1987, the technologies that enabled that plant to make 500,000 units a day did not exist yet. And if Jim had just kept doing what he was doing, that plant wouldn't have seen the growth that it did. It was by keeping an eye on emerging technologies, being aware of new technological advances as they came out, and taking the chance of looking into them and adopting them, that enabled that plant to increase its productivity so dramatically. So that's why we're here to talk about AR today. It is an emerging technology. It's something that a few years ago was the realms of science fiction and is now something that you can have on your smartphone. So we're really excited to find out more about it and see how it could possibly make your business more productive. And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Mark and the panelists for the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen, and a really nice introduction. So just want to explain a little bit about the area and what gives me the right to be able to host this panel of experts today. So a quick bit of background about the area. It is the only global membership-funded non-profit alliance. We only focus on enterprise AR. So whilst we have companies and we're supportive of technologies like VR and the B2C kind of environment, we only focus on enterprise AR, and it's about supporting the growth of a comprehensive ecosystem. We are currently 56 members strong, and basically the membership breaks up into 3 different groups. We have enterprises or companies that have deployed or are deploying AR solutions. So as you can see here, companies like Boeing, Bosch, Lockheed Martin, and I'm really excited to have 2 of our members, Welsh Water and Medtronic, on the expert panel today, and you'll be meeting them very soon. We then have a group of providers of AR solutions, and that's a combination of software or platform and or consultancy. We've seen an interesting growth in companies that are doing content development and content extraction. And of course, there's hardware providers as well. And I'm excited to introduce RealWare to you today and some of the amazing work that they're doing. The third group is around non-commercial organizations, government agencies, research institutes, and universities who are often at the leading edge thinking of AR, and bringing them into the ecosystem, into the network, allows everybody to look into the future and look at research as well. So what does the area actually do? Well, that breaks down into 4 strategic pillars. The first one is about creating and delivering thought leadership content. There's just not enough information out there at the moment to allow business decision makers to make informed decisions. So we focus on delivering information on use cases, so what problems can be solved, case studies, examples of those use cases being solved in real life, what technologies are needed, and most importantly, the ROI. So we're creating, collecting, and curating the latest neutral information for you business decision makers. The second one is networking, and that's about bringing the area members and the wider ecosystem together through virtual or face-to-face meetings. It's a great way to engage with the members, to build partnerships, to co-innovate, and to kind of understand from sharing experiences how to deliver successful AR projects. Third is around the educate side. We're already beginning to see a skills gap in well-trained AR developers and workers. So we are working with universities and educational institutes to help develop courses and make sure that we have a steady set of skilled staff coming into the ecosystem, and that's something that's really important. And then the fourth barrier and the fourth pillar, and something we are focusing more and more on, is reducing the barriers to adoption. And what we mean on that is that at the moment there are lots of organizations that are doing proof of concepts, pilots, small trials within AR, but we're not seeing such a great company deployment or a wider deployment happening. So often these are to do with business challenges and business areas, so things like safety and security. So we have committees that meet on a regular basis to talk about some of the issues, to help clarify them, prioritize them, and develop solutions for them. So we've been developing anything from infographics to help explain some of the challenges to detailed deliverables like an AR safety playbook and security models. So, in a couple of areas, safety, security, we're also creating a single set of requirements. We have a marketing committee that's about promoting the ecosystem, helping explain what AR is, what the members are doing, and what the benefits are. And then also we have a research capability, and this is really interesting. It's a very simple process. We just ask the area members what they need to research. There's a pitching kind of event, then everyone gets an opportunity to vote, and whatever research comes with the most votes, the area funds and delivers that research. So we've already done 3 projects, the first one being wearable security and what's the latest status and what's needed to support that in the future. We've created an ROI calculator for our members, which they're using now to help develop business cases. We've also done a piece of work on human factors and safety. And this is a framework to allow, as a company goes through their project, to consider and think about some of the requirements around safety and human factors to make sure they're not forgotten about. We're actually undertaking the 4th research project, which is very relevant to this group, and it's about the deep dive into the barriers to adoption in manufacturing, and that should be released to the members only in the next few weeks. And then we have a 5th research project that we're just kicking off at the moment, which is more to do with the kind of combination or understanding how AR works with technologies like IoT and AR to help companies really provide the benefit and streamline their operations. So, lots of interesting work going in the research capability as well. And finally, before I hand over to the real experts, I wanted to just tell you that we are having the 3rd area workshop. It's actually next week on the 26th and 27th of March. It will be in Sheffield at the AMRC Factory 2050. It's a really great location. We'll have, again, lots of practitioners, but companies there who are really interested in finding out more about AR. We'll be going through lots and lots of different areas, including understanding use cases and requirements. We'll be talking about safety, security. We'll be talking about change management, how you convince your stakeholders to invest and how you work with your workers. We'll be doing a design-led process for AR in there as well. So if you're interested, please feel free to email me at mark@thearea.org or angela@thearea.org, as it says here. There's a minimal cost of £50 as well, so it's not an expensive event, and it'd be great to see you there. Okay, more importantly, let's start to introduce you to today's experts. As you can see, we have a number of really exciting companies who have done lots of work in this space. So they're each going to introduce themselves and their company and what they're doing in the AR space. And it's my pleasure and honor to hand over to Gary Smith from Welsh Water, who will talk through the work he's doing leading the AR initiatives. Gary.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gary Smith. I'm Head of Management Systems and Asset Information for Dual Cymru Welsh Water. So we are a not-for-profit water and sewage undertaking serving all of Wales here in the UK. We have 3.5 million customers, and we provide clean drinking water and the wastewater services to just over 1.4 million homes and businesses here in Wales, and also in Chester and Hereford area. On a daily basis, we're treating and processing and moving through our almost 27,000 kilometres of mains, 800 million litres of water, and at the same time through a slightly larger wastewater network, dealing with roughly the same volume of wastewater in just over 800 sewage treatment works situated throughout Wales and the other areas of the catchment. Of particular note for us is that we have a huge coastline, which, as you can see from the slide, is just over 4,500 kilometres long. And we have a record number of blue flag beaches in this coastline, to which we attract just over 1 million visitors and around 70,000 school children every year. And we have 3,500 colleagues, employees, fourth largest company in Wales. And to give you some idea about the scale of our investment in some new technologies, at the moment, the last year of this AMP, we're investing £1.3 million a day back into the assets. So moving on then to the next slide, the challenges for us were fairly simple. We have a huge amount of incredibly complex information that we need to deliver to our operational colleagues who run all of these process works and the management of the network. We were challenged by our executive board to show some innovation, and also we're moving into the world of smart data and data analytics, and we work around the application of smart decision making based on data. And some of you will be familiar with the lean methodology as well, which is driving out costs within the business. So that's Welsh Water and who we are, and the rationale for the development of what we call the WOM, or the IWOM, so the Integrated Works Operation Manual. And if we click on one slide, I'll give you an idea, just a picture of the device that we're currently, or one of the devices rather, that we're currently using to deliver this this technology. So this is a typical use case. We got a number of others, but I thought for today this was probably the most useful one. So we can deliver to our operational colleagues all of the critical safety and process information via either a handheld device or a laptop or a piece of wearable technology. And it's important to stress that we're platform agnostic, so we will use some of the RealWare products. We're using some of the Vuzix products as well as a number of ruggedized tablets as well. So we use the device essentially to deliver all of this complex information. So critical safety process information. We can automate the site induction process. So some of the audience may well have been on sort of high risk industrial environments, and so we can automate that process and use models, either a rendered 3D model of the asset or actual video clips and emergency schematics to drive through the important health and safety elements as you enter the site. Into the technology bit then, obviously our operational sites or a particular asset is a combination of subsets of information or process, plant and equipment. We're able to identify all of those elements through the use of either QR or NFC tagging. And we use QR and NFC to actually trigger the augmented reality overlays. So if you can imagine a particularly complex piece of plant or equipment, it may present a number of valves or a number of switches, a number of critical decisions that need to be made in a particular order for the safe and effective operation of that process. To compound things, particularly in the water and sewage sector, valves will work two ways. So you might have a sliding or gate valve, and some of those will rotate clockwise and anti-clockwise. So we have been able to use augmented reality to provide a visual overlay on top of what an operator or a working colleague can see, which gives them both the correct identification, for example, of a valve, but also tells them the number of turns and the direction of turn, or the angle of rotation, and sequentially the right order to be able to operate those processes. And what we're talking about here is fairly substantial pieces of kit, very large valve diameters, and actually the consequences of operating that equipment in the wrong order can be catastrophic, and we could end up with significant process downtime customers of supply or risk to the water quality in particular. So the AR overlay of the plant and process is particularly important, and then we also can overlay that critical safety information at the same time. So we may have areas which have explosive atmospheres or exposed high voltage electrical equipment, confined spaces, for example. So we use AR in those areas to actually deliver safety information to prevent access and to offer guidance to our support and colleagues. So that's a fundamental element, difficult to not to demonstrate, but it works effectively, incredibly well, and we'll come back to the benefits a bit later on. And then the last bit really from me in terms of typical use case is the automation process. So a combination of the AR elements and the NFC QR tagging has allowed us to automate an awful lot of the process. And again, aligned with the benefits, which we'll come back to, we can get some return on investment. So that's our typical use case.
Great. Thank you very much, Gary. That's very insightful. And as I said, we'll be diving into a little bit more detail around some of the benefits and challenges of implementing your solution here. So great, thank you. So next, I'd like to hand over to Andreas Hartmann from Medtronic. Let me just get your slide up, Andreas. Okay,
thanks,
so
Mark.
I will hand over to you, sir.
Great, thanks very much. So, as Mark said, my name is Andreas Hartmann, and I'm a principal development architect with Medtronic. And one of my focus areas is the development and adoption of AR within process development, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple of slides, but I want to give you a very quick introduction to the company that you can see what we do and maybe relate the way we use AR to our company. So we're the largest medical device manufacturer, I believe, out there, and we're also known as the pacemaker companies. We treat more than 70 conditions in the human body, mainly with our medical devices. Some you can see there on the next slide. If you move on, Mark, to the next slide, I can point out a couple of the really interesting ones, like with the smallest pacemaker in the world, and you can see that the pill cam is quite an interesting one, a capsule for endoscopy, which kind of takes images from let's say the inside of the darkest area of your body. We also do a lot of neuro devices with brain stimulators and things like that. On the next slide, you can see the size of the company. Over 86,000 employees and almost 10,000 scientists and engineers. So we are a large, manufacturing company. So the innovation side is very big for us and important. But not only innovation on the medical device side itself, which we also manufacture, which is an interesting one of the main reasons we're on the call here, but also the innovation around this. So innovation within the manufacturing sites and before it actually becomes a product that's manufacturable. So Mark, next slide there, please. So this is the group I'm being in. It's called CSH Process Development, CSH being a part or a division of Medtronic, looking after coronary and structural heart devices and treatments. And process development is a group which sits kind of in between chairs. Like, there's all those brilliant minds that come up with solutions to conditions, medical conditions, and they come up with treatments and devices. That's the one side, and the other side then is it's going to get manufactured in one way or another. Process development in the middle looks at how are we going to actually take that brilliant idea and make that product manufacturable. And one big part of it is, besides the processes, to look after equipment that will be able to manufacture the product safe, and obviously at one point also from a business point of view to make it viable for Medtronic to use those devices. So this is where we are sitting. So we get everything from R&I, research and innovation, over R&D into full manufacturing and operation and process. So we have looked at how can we utilize new technologies, specifically like AR, in all those areas. That was the first part, and as Mark already hinted at, it's very hard these days with new technologies to convince senior management, who basically has the wallet with all the cash in there you want to get at, to invest in those kind of technologies. Specifically for us, as we are a large manufacturing company, it isn't the product we're going to sell out, so we need to make sure that there is still a return on investment visible that isn't coming straight from patients or from other customers. So we segmented out what use cases we could see this and similar technologies being applied to. Research, development, innovation being one of them. Of course, big is a cross-site thing. Medtronic is a globally operating company, so rapid cross-site collaboration is a big part of where we see real value in at the moment. There's lots of traveling going on between the continents, and obviously this is high costs and time consuming. We're improving predictability, and when we come to the benefits, that's something I'd like to talk a little bit more in detail about. Virtual meetings goes back to the cross-site collaboration and process development. Down here is the biggest, of course, for us, equipment reviews, and this is where our biggest use case is situated. So from the start of planning, when you see the product and you're looking at manufacturing, you're thinking of, okay, how's the equipment going to look like that's going to manufacture this particular product. And the traditional way, as it is you're using CAD software to come up with the equipment, and then you either do it yourself or you give it to someone who can build that piece of equipment for you as a prototype, and then you do your reviews, you see flaws, you make changes, it goes back and forth, and that can go on for a while. And that could be also equipment which is very expensive. So you can see already a large buildup of time as well as a large buildup of money you're investing into redesigning all those prototypes, and they come back in and you do another review, and that's going to take weeks and weeks and months of a project like this. So we were able to introduce AR to take CAD models and do virtual, or in this case augmented, equipment design reviews. So before we actually cut metal for the first time, we have done multiple design reviews with stakeholders, and this is an important part, I suppose. Stakeholders which are often non-technical, and that goes down even to operators who are supposed to operate those later in during manufacturing, and get their input into what you think about that piece of equipment. Is that, you know, can you work with that? Is it according to specifications? Finance will be in there. There's people, stakeholders like health and safety or facilities, and all those important stakeholders can have an input until you have a model where everyone who has something to say got his say in, and then you go cut to metal. So we have examples of this where we did about 5 or 6 rounds around with augmented design reviews on particular pieces of equipment, and they came in and they had no redesign at all done to them, and running since, and they're still running in test phases, but they've produced thousands of test pieces of whatever they're producing, and there was no need for redesign. So that is a great step ahead. And also, design reviews are expensive, so you cut them to minimum, right? And you do the redesigns, cut to minimum, and if there's still a flaw, you're gonna, at the end, you're gonna look at it and say, can we live with it? Yes, no. And if someone says, yeah, it's all right, we'll work around it, we come up with a process or something, then that's it. By introducing the augmented design reviews, we were able to increase the quality, because an augmented design review has a quick turnaround. It doesn't cost us a lot. We could make the change by lunch and have another design review in the afternoon on that piece of equipment. A lot of the others might be something we want to go after, but for us it was important to identify the use case which gives us a very quick payback, where it is a very obvious return of investment. And as you can see down in operations, it neatly ties into Industry 4.0 later on. It will hopefully somehow move into virtual operations and enable us to do a lot more cross-site collaborations in a virtual environment rather than doing traveling all the time. Thanks, Mark. And with that, I hand over to John, I believe, JT.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andreas. And that was really interesting, really insightful. Thank you. As you said, I'd like to hand over to John Surgood from RealWare, affectionately known as JT. JT, if you'd like to talk about the excellent work of RealWare.
Affectionately, Mark, hey, that's great to know. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm John Thurgood, or JT, from RealWare. I represent RealWare in the European territories. And RealWare is a manufacturer of a head-mounted, voice-controlled Android tablet, as you can see on the screen there. In its current guise, you can see it mounted onto a hard hat, but it can be worn with straps, in bump caps. Really depends upon the different industry that you might want to be focused on. But this device is really built for industrial users. These are technicians and engineers who are in the field working in challenging environments, you know, inclement weather, underneath engines where it could be mucky and oily, or in very loud environments. But most importantly, these operators are using the device wearing PPE equipment. So they could be safety glasses, they could be wearing gloves, the usual type of PPE environment. And so we're focused on that user, and what you can see there on screen underneath the hard hat is the device itself. In fact, that's the head-mounted tablet intrinsically safe version. So you can see a screen boom arm coming out the front of that device. And the reason that that's really important is because the screen is a monocular device. It's meant to be a reference device for those users out in the field. From a health and safety perspective, the last thing that you want to do is to restrict their vision in any way. So our device has a monocular screen that looks like a 7-inch tablet at arm's length away. Just above it, there's a 16-megapixel camera, and it's an Android 8.1 tablet. Okay, and the focus really here is about making sure that those technicians and engineers in the field are able to be productive. They're able to record information from the field and also visualize and see what's going on. Thank you, Mark. So we have 4 core use cases that are used with the RealWare devices. The one at the top there, Remote Mentor. This is really about making sure that your technician in the field, if he's performing a particular works order or task and he has some difficulty in completing that, he can phone a friend. So just as we might use Skype or WebEx, you know, in our business lives, this user in the field can do the same thing. So in doing so, the technician, or rather the expert that sits back in the office, can give that remote support. So the expert can see what's going on in the field by viewing it through the 16-megapixel camera that's on the head-mounted tablet, and he can audibly guide that maintenance technician through whatever the issue is that he's experiencing in the field. You know, the important point about that particular use case is that engineer can support that technician remotely. They can be thousands of miles away. So this is about giving rapid support to that end user. Typically what happens in organizations is you'll have to wait, you know, sometimes weeks to book that expert to come out on site. And of course, when the expert's out on site, it's, you know, they're offline, there's travel costs and all sorts of things to be thought about and included there. So this gives the user an immediate way of getting assistance in the field in whichever kind of difficult situation they might be in. On the left-hand side of the image that you're looking at is it refers to IIoT data visualization, so industrial IoT. This is about making sure that the wearer of the head-mounted tablet is able to see real-time what's going on with the equipment that's around them. That could be everything from, as the dials are showing there at the Devil's Canyon Brewery, what the readings are from the fermenter equipment, but it could also just as easily be a man down event has occurred locally within the team that you're working with. There could be gas detected somewhere, or you could be voice controlling the starting and stopping of operational equipment in the field. And just to dive into that example, in a bit more detail, there's one of the stories I have from a potato chip manufacturing organization is, a particular engineer has 9 lines of potato chip manufacturing that he needs to maintain, and the blades for those chippers need to be changed every 90 minutes. The control panel for that particular chipper is 250 meters away. Well, that technician actually walks around 6 miles per day, going backwards and forwards to the control panel and back to the equipment to make the change. The head-mounted tablet gives the technician the ability to control those systems using his voice at the place he's at. So there's no, you can imagine how long it takes to walk 6 miles for those trekkers amongst us. That's an awful lot of productivity saved, and he's doing that whilst he's wearing his PPE equipment, and he's responding rapidly to issues that are coming up. On the right hand side of this screen, we refer to the document navigator service. So you imagine today lots of technicians and engineers carry around paperwork, and that paperwork can be out of date. It could be specific to what that engineer has experienced and made notes of in the field. And of course, he's having to carry it around and use his hands whilst he's looking at that documentation. This is difficult in outdoor environments or various inclement weather conditions. So what our device allows you to do is see that graphic on screen, look at that schematic, zoom into a particular part. It could be an electronic wiring diagram where you can zoom into a particular piece of that diagram, hold it in. You can ask the device to freeze the document, meaning it's holding that piece of diagram in your sight, whilst you're hands-free controlling the object that you might be performing a works order on, repairing, whatever. And last but by no means least is workflow processing. So the head-mounted tablet allows a works order to be selected, and as Gary earlier mentioned, using QR codes to kick off works order work in the field. You can start the process, and what you're doing is you're providing that technician with the information they need at the step of the workflow that they're in. So, for example, if it were me uncoupling, a particular piece of equipment, there could be a video shown as to how to uncouple it. You could, if you were performing a bit of field maintenance, and maybe you needed to record some notes about what you've seen in the field. Well, the device will automatically listen to your voice and convert that to text, meaning that you could insert that commentary into a form, for example. And you're performing all of those things step by step, either offline, because it's an Android 8 tablet, so it can work in an offline mode, or if you're connected to your enterprise network, that information can be immediately streamed and provided back to whichever systems are providing it. So that gives you a kind of a quick view of the 4 core use cases that we're focused on. And the last slide here is really talking about the hardware elements of our head-mounted tablet. So as I've mentioned before, the screen looks like a 7-inch tablet at arm's length away. The boom arm that you can see from the front of the device there can be pushed back if you don't want it in your vision. 16 megapixel image stabilized, high performance camera. One of the most wonderful things about this device, and I'm not just saying that because I'm with Realwear, but I've heard it from so many times in the field, is that because this device has 4 noise cancelling microphones, your mobile phones, for example, typically have 2. This device can work in windy, noisy conditions up to 95 dB, and it hears what you're saying, and it can do all of that dictation, translation of your messages. It has a speaker built on board, so you can hear, for example, what that expert might be giving you information on in the field. It could be reading out live IoT data, i.e., this equipment's running at peak performance, or this temperature, etc. It's a fully ruggedized device, so plus 50 degrees centigrade to minus 20. There's a variant which is intrinsically safe, which means it can be used in explosive environments, everything from oil, gas, petrochem, right the way through to pharma environments. Has a latest Snapdragon Qualcomm processor. Connectivity. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into the device, which is great if you've got Wi-Fi in the environment you're in, but don't forget that this device can be used offline. And it can also be tethered to a MiFi device that might provide you local Wi-Fi capability based on a 3G or 4G network available in that environment. It has GPS, a gyroscope built in, and another really important point is that the battery on the standard device is hot swappable and will give you 10 hours usability in the field, and in the intrinsically safe one, because the battery is not removable, it'll give you slightly longer. So with that kind of concludes my kind of intro piece. I hope I haven't gone too much over time.
Thanks so much, JT. And that's great. So hopefully everyone's got a really good understanding of some of the companies that are delivering some amazing solutions using AR, and then also some of the kind of enabling technology. So just want to kind of delve into, we've got just a few questions to ask the panelists, but please, again, remind you, if you have any questions yourself, please use the GoToMeeting tool and type in any questions there. So we've talked a lot about the use cases and what you're doing, but for any business, it's important to understand what are the benefits, both from a tangible and intangible perspective. I've been lucky to speak to lots of companies in the space, and it's all about the ROI and benefit. So can I perhaps start with Gary? Can you talk a little bit about the benefits you've realized from implementing your use case?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I guess I'd just like to say that we didn't go down this route with a view to driving out costs within some of the process tasks that we do, but it has been a direct benefit. So essentially for us then, the benefits were around, or are around, increases in efficiency. So we're able to deliver that complex information fairly quickly to end users, and particularly if there's a process change or a plant and a piece of equipment change, we can certainly do that. John touched on the remote assistance element. We do use the HMT along with other products, but we are platform agnostic, but certainly the remote assistance element has been fantastic. And in terms of trying to reduce risk to our colleagues, particularly in hazardous environments, it's been particularly beneficial. Customer focus is critical for us, and we find that the AR application on the overlays, it drives consistency and accuracy in our process operations, so there's very little room for error in terms of decision making, and that drive and that consistency and accuracy has definitely reduced errors and accelerates and streamlines our processes. We can also use the AR to validate tasks and enhance our diagnostics. So we might do a particular step in a process, we can then pause with that AR overlay and maybe take a snapshot image to prove that we've done it in a particular way, and then drive forward to the next step in the activity. A benefit directly for us, but it wasn't realized initially, was that we can essentially get less specialized operators performing complex tasks with either the remote assistance or the actual tracking and the AR overlays. It's been an unexpected benefit, I guess, from our point of view. The automated report generation, the forms, the records, the AR interweaved with those outputs has also been particularly beneficial. We can't really escape this idea about the bottom line at the end of the day. I'm fairly lucky here at Welsh Water to have a innovation budget which I can use to try and develop improvements for customers and colleagues. All I will say with you in terms of the initial pilot that was rolled out a couple of years ago now, that actually we achieved our return on investment within one scheme. So our initial approach at the AR elements gave us our OII on that initial phase. So just an overview of the benefits that I can think of from hand. I'm sure there will be more, and as we tweak and develop our AR implementation, our actual risk reduction can be quantified, as well as that consistency and error reduction.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gary. And I think it's fair to say in a lot of enterprise AR use cases, the savings more about saving money rather than making money, and it's something to kind of emphasize quite a bit. So I'd like to ask the same question to Andreas as well, the benefits that you've got. You've mentioned a few, but it'd be great to talk about a few more.
Thanks, Mark. And I think you mentioned an important point there. It is about saving money in whatever shape or form rather than making money out of it. And for us, as I outlined earlier with augmented design reviews, that's what we brought the biggest benefit in today, by saving a lot of costs. So one of the things is that, if you look at the evolution of design, be it in automotive or in our business, medical, from a drawing on a piece of paper to whatever molded type of a prototype over to computer-aided design, and then having it on a 2D screen was already a big move. We just taken this, I think, to the next level now, and taking this 2D drawing and design into the 3D world and making it accessible to users who aren't either confident in computer design, or who don't have the technical capabilities or background to visualize the pieces of equipment in place or in situ. So being able to do this from cut into 3D, augmented into space, has dramatically improved the predictability we have in terms of the equipment that comes in physically at one point. Saying that we could implement a lot of bits and pieces that would have been missed before, because you wouldn't see it in 2D, or you wouldn't even look at the back of a piece of equipment in 2D. But once it comes in, you realize, oh, there's the calibration part, but there's actually a pillar where this is supposed to be accessed for calibration. And then you go back, and because you can't move the pillar, you have to move your calibration part on the piece of equipment. So the predictability of that this piece fits exactly where it needs to go, and that it does what it is designed to do, has increased dramatically. And by doing so, we've also reduced the design costs. As I outlined earlier, equipment's prototypes don't have to go into costly redesign iterations and cycles with maybe third-party vendors who are building the piece of equipment. They have to rewire stuff because the screens aren't the right height, or they're obstructed by something you have added to the piece of equipment later. So again, predictable what comes in, and we're reducing design costs by the cost itself and by time that would add to a project. And also because we have enabled to do design reviews augmented across distance as well. we can basically invite people with other HoloLenses, for example, or AR equipment to participate in those augmented design reviews, and they can be in a different location. Seeing that we're a global company, I think that's a very important point. There should be no barriers in that sense, and I think there's the biggest payback for us at the moment in terms of the benefits. And if I look at the long list of technologies and use cases we can adopt that, I think the list of benefits becomes really, really long, and that's an exciting part of the whole journey.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, and kind of agree and echo your last point there, that there are many different benefits. One of the things we've been looking at within the area and trying to help define are some of those kind of slightly more intangible ones. You know, you mentioned the reducing risk and the kind of pillars scenario. You know, that's difficult sometimes to quantify in pounds or in dollars and euros, whatever. So, you know, it's kind of been able to talk about very much tangible and intangible benefits as well. And that's something that the AR story needs to develop for the business decision makers. Cool. Thank you, you two. If it's okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. We have 10 minutes left and talk a little bit more about the technologies to give the listeners a view on what sort of technologies are needed. So perhaps, JT, I can start with yourself about giving an overview of the technologies needed for successful implementation.
Sure, I think so there are a bunch of solutions that our listeners will have out in the field. That they could be Skype for Business today. They might be running their works orders on Maximo. They might be looking at IoT data from OZSoft or SAP. So it's important to focus on one version of the truth, bringing information from these systems all to bear and to be relevant for that user in the field is sometimes quite challenging to do. If we take an example of just a schematic about a particular piece of equipment, ensuring that that's stored in a centralized location, that there's one version of that is incredibly important to do, to make sure that that technician in the field needs to access to the right information at the right time. Ensuring that understanding the user's connectivity to the network world. So, for example, using the HMT, it's a Wi-Fi based device. If there's no Wi-Fi available, you might need to connect it to a mobile network using a hotspot or your mobile phone. You might have within your enterprise existing mobile device management platforms like AirWatch or Mobile Iron. And these MDMs, as they're called, will do the job of ensuring that you're connected to the VPN of your organization and that you're accessing information which is right and relevant for you, and very importantly that information isn't shared with the broader external audience. So understanding where the users are within your environment, what information you want to get to them and why is extremely important, and working through some of those kind of technological challenges are important to do. Our device, of course, is connected in many ways, and I kind of didn't mention this before, but we have over 10,000 deployed users of our device in the field, so plenty of experience about how you might go and do that.
That's great. Thank you, JT. I kind of just want to add to that as well, that there's a kind of common theme that goes on where people think AR is a wearable device. And of course, that isn't the case. There are millions and probably billions of devices out in the world through tablets and mobile phones that can be used, but also even solutions using projection and projection AR bring some real benefits and use cases. So, if you're thinking about AR as a solution, there are lots of different opportunities. I think, and JT's mentioned a few just to consider about the content side as well. The best solutions take the content from the live systems and they're able to update that and deploy it live, and it's all about bringing that contextual and relevant and timely information to the user. So some kind of other points on that. Gary, in terms of technologies that you've looked at and deploying, can you perhaps put a little bit of insight and what you've been focusing on?
Yeah, certainly, Mark. I think I would echo the point you made there about let's not get hung up on wearables. We have certainly in this state some wearables that we are using. I think if we were just to think about a wearable piece, then the critical thing for us is it's got to be non-intrusive and mustn't increase the end user's risk in any way. So there are some wearables which are fairly clunky, and there are others which are incredibly lightweight and really don't offer, don't impinge on the line of sight in any way, and don't detract. But certainly from the hardware point of view, we've got tablets, we've got other devices, we've got mobile phones that we roll out the apps on. They've got to be easy to use, lightweight. For our industry, they've got to be wipe cleanable. They've got to be robust, reliable. Security is an issue. That's one of the challenges we face. We may have time to come back to that. And of course, for the operators, they've got to be intuitive in use with a long battery life, and the price point has got to be right in terms of buying volumes of these devices. And then from the software point of view, well, John mentioned some of the bits of the apps that we've got, but certainly we pull down information from SAP. We happen to be using Wikitude as our AR platform, and we roll those elements into an APK, which we then deliver via our own internal apps at work process to ensure security to the end users. And that deals with that issue about making sure that the devices are always current and up to date.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. Okay, with a few minutes left, we've talked about a lot of the benefits and actual solutions, but it'd be great to talk about some of the challenges quickly and how your organization has been able to overcome them. So apologies, we only have a few minutes, but perhaps if we can start with Andreas, with how you've overcome some of the challenges internally.
Yeah, so I think some of the main challenges, and JT and Gary have already kind of highlighted the connectivity. I'd like to add there in terms of the challenge is high-speed broadband and bandwidth everywhere. Like no matter what we do, we want to be connected these days, and for a lot of the tasks we're doing, it is an essential part of the integration. So the biggest challenge I think we're facing, especially as a company the size of Medtronic, is the integration of devices and software into an existing IT infrastructure. And also, which comes with it, is the rapid integration or adoption of the new technologies coming out. So IT in large companies is a heavy piece to move, so to speak. And I think working with IT, and this is how we try to overcome those challenges, working with IT from the start and keeping them in the loop and having them helping us to come up with those innovations and integrate them at an early stage is very, very important. That's on one side. And the second challenge is to get the users to accept those technologies. I think, like today, you can't just go and say, here's your new device and you have to use this now. I think the only way to get users to accept, like be it operators on the floor, if you want to use it for training or whatever you want to do, you need to make their life easier. That's a good way to get a user acceptance, and B, you need to make it either exciting or something they want to use. You know yourself, you're losing your users very quick if you have a heavy, clunky device which they need to put on their head, which is very complicated to operate, which doesn't work half of the time, and you often only get one shot. So if you lose them there, that could be it for this integration. So I think the message is how do you overcome it, integrate and involve everybody who needs to be involved as early as possible. and listen to them as well. There's a lot of concerns or things, points you might not think of at the start if you're very technically focused like myself, but you think that's actually a valid point, and if you can include them, it makes adoption later on hopefully a lot easier.
That's great. Thank you, Andreas, and that's some really good points there. Gary, just a quick 30 seconds.
Yeah, probably the interrelationship between all that data being moved around and our IT security requirements. So very highly regulated industry, national infrastructure, assets, critical for public health. That's probably been one of the biggest challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm sorry to say we've come to the top of the hour. I just want to thank all of our panelists to providing some real insight into the augmented reality space and what they're doing. So thank you to Andreas, Gary, and JT. Just a quick reminder that the area is running the workshop in Sheffield next week. If people are interested, please let me know. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about what the area can do to help your organization and start you on the journey of really benefiting from augmented reality, then please again drop me a line at the mark@thearea.org. I wish you all the very best on any of your AR journeys. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.